Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Happy birthday to Adefemi. Happy belated birthday to you. And, a shout out to Mrs. Abati for what she put on Friday. I got those implications, and she's the standard of the wife that we single men are looking for. So thanks again. Bimbai, good morning.
Good morning
to Rufai. And in fact, speaking of wives and single life, you remember Dr. Abati was talking about Singles Day last week. And even though it was, teasing Rufai and myself as he always does, it's a big day that's actually ending today. So we kick off with that and look at what to watch this week. So 11/11 Singles Day in China ends today, and a lot is going to be focused on the sales. We're going to get to the numbers in a moment. So that's for Monday. That's today. Tuesday, in fact, China dominates the week, right? We're going to be getting Baidu's World Event Day, the big internet conglomerate. We understand that Baidu is going to unveil some new glasses that are supposed to challenge Meta and other players in the AI space with their augmented reality glasses. So we'll be looking forward to the Baidu World Event Day. And then Wednesday, since we're talking about Singles Day in China, we're going to be getting earnings from Tencent. We understand that Tencent, in fact, I think there was some news this morning, they'll be investing about $500 million in Indonesia in about, I think, a third or fourth data center. So that's news coming out this week from Tencent. We'll be getting their earnings for, I think it's 9-month, third quarter 2024. And then Thursday, in fact, Wednesday, US CPI should be coming out on Wednesday as well. But for China, Thursday, we've also got JD.com releasing their earnings, and also Alibaba on Friday as well. So getting back to China's Singles Day again, remember this came out to counter Valentine's Day. It's for single people in China to buy things for themselves, but it's actually spread to much of Asia. If you look at the gross merchandise value, so your gross merchandise value captures the value of goods that are sold within a specific time period, and it's before the deductions that are made that gets you your revenue. So if you look at those figures there, you will see that from 2018, and by the way, as Dr. Abati mentioned last week, Singles Day is bigger than Black Friday in the United States. I mean, multiple times, right? So you can see 44 billion in gross merchandise value sales in 2018. It climbed to 55 billion in 2019, then doubled to over 100 billion in 2020, and then it peaked in 2023, about 156 billion or so, but it is estimated that for 2024, the figure you're seeing there is 118 billion. We all know about the challenges that China has faced. Yeah, and we're going to get to inflation numbers in a moment. The property sector crisis, consumers pulling back, and the weak economic numbers and industrial figures. So Singles Day is not expected to do as well as it did last year, but we should get those figures later on this week. As I mentioned, inflation, or rather deflation, is an issue in China. So those numbers also came out this week. If you look at year-on-year inflation in China for October, 0.3%. It was estimated for 0.4%. Again, that's year-on-year, not month-on-month. September was 0.4%. And then look at PPI, look at producer price inflation. It is negative, right? It's in the deflationary territory. So 2.9% drop there in October for PPI. The estimates were for a drop of 2.5%. And if you look at September, it was 2.8%. And this deflationary spiral that China is in, consumers keep pulling back, expecting that prices will continue to fall. So it hits the margins of those producers, and it's an issue for them. Now, on Friday, China did announce the stimulus measures. Dr. Bati talked about this earlier last week. Stimulus measures that came out of their council meeting. And it was to the tune of about 1.4 trillion. The gentleman you're seeing there is Lohan Fao. He's China's Minister of Finance. The gentleman in the glasses there. So, I mean, pretty much they announced about $1.4 trillion. We converted it from yuan in stimulus. About 840 billion of that is supposed to be local government bonds. And they're going to be doing a lot of refinancing. They're saying that is supposed to save, municipalities about 600 billion in interest payments. Well, the Asian markets fell this morning morning because they said that they're still looking for more from China. Also, those inflation numbers also weighed on Asia markets this morning as well. Round off with Nigeria. The transmission company of Nigeria put out a tweet, I think it was late last night or early this morning, that there's been vandalism on the Lokoja Gwagwalada transmission line. They said they found aluminium coils or something that were stolen, and so that has been. If you've noticed, we've had a lot of grid collapses, but I think this most recent one is what they're attributing to this vandalism. So it must be said that the Minister of Power probably has to declare a state of emergency. You have to beef up security. What do we do? Because electricity, without it, all this AI talk and tech talk and everything else, nothing can really move forward. I know KPMG is on the front page of today's This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record. At the top of the masthead, it talks about, I think a different may have touched on that, how KPMG is looking at Nigeria's efforts to grow oil production to 4 million barrels today. But we are going to be focusing on electricity with KPMG later today. They put out a report earlier in the year on grid decentralization, and it's very timely since you had the Transmission Company of Nigeria coming out with this vandalism on the grid, which is affecting the entire country. So KPMG's report is looking at the matters arising around decentralizing the grid. And as you know, President Tinubu did sign that Electricity Act, which allows the states to be able to, generate and transmit their own electricity. But there's a journey to get there. So we're going to be having, coming up on the Global Business Report, Martins Arogie. He, of course, is the partner tax regulatory and people services at KPM Nigeria. We're going to be digging into it. And some of those issues, if we put up on the screen there, as far as the matters arising, will be around the source of power for the subsidiaries, because the present setup now is where the discos purchase electricity from NBET under the supervision of NERC. How do you now transfer that over to the states, and how does that work? So there's also the matter of transfer price considerations, transfer of tax costs, and then potential tax leakages as well. We know that, Taiwo Oyedele of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Policy, he's been doing what he can to try to harmonize VATs, and you know that it's excluded off electricity. So a lot to discuss. So power remains, for me, our number one issue in this country. You can't have productivity without power. So that'll be one of our discussions later today on the Global Business Report. That's our update for today.
So is China quickly becoming the sick man of Asia? Have they gotten to a point of glut in growth that Japan got to in 1990, and Japan has just been coasting since that time? Because it looks like it to me. Look at what happened with Evergrande in China.
Good question.
Look at the deceleration happening in China. Look at how China has now sure possibility, owing to the fact that there's also an imminent debt that's still staring at China in the face. So when America and China goes at this fight, this Thucydides stripe fight, the anomaly fight, with tariffs and everything, America has always confidence of the fact that China can't do much because there's a debt holding them back. And you can see the immense subsidy China has put in it. For a while, the Chinese economy has not grown according to the threshold it used to grow. And this speaks volumes. So is China fast becoming Asia? Fast becoming Japan of the 1990s. How Japan grew so much, then since the 1990s started decelerating. Because if you remember back in the days, Donald Trump used to accuse Japan of taking Americans' lunch. All of this accusation of China just started in 2001 when China joined WTO. Only time will tell. But there are some things we can pick from there. You can see the bond and the subsidies China is injecting into the local government to reach the people, to be able to vitalize the economy, to be able to vitalize production. And that's what we ought to be doing in the power sector. When you see the power sector here, and we are still talking about vandals, it shows we are not ready. We are still talking about declaring state of emergency. Rotus, don't even mention that word. Because when people declare state of emergency, they are not ready to do anything. At this point, can't we use AI to be able to secure our lines, to be able to see the vandals, to be able to act as deterrents? These are the multiple problems we have here.
All right, very quickly, I think China is going to have to buckle up and fasten their seatbelts. I just read some news that Steve Madden, which of course is a $3 billion shoe company, has already announced that they're going to be pulling out a big percentage of their production out of China. This is in response to, the the promise by Donald Trump that tariffs will be imposed on any imports from China. But the irony around it really is that this Trump policy, he needs to be careful about it, because this production is not being rerouted to the United States to create American jobs. They're going to Cambodia, they're going to Mexico, they're going to any other place except United States where they can get cheaper labor. Vietnam, I believe, is another place. So I think China needs to be very careful and create a plan, because it looks like their problems are only just beginning. And just like the first Trump presidency, this second presidency is gonna show no mercy to the Chinese production sector, and by connection to that, the Chinese economy.
Okay, the big story for the past 1 year in China has been about deflation and what the target is for the year 2024. Even the World Bank has said it has reduced its projection to about 4.5%, meaning that China will not be able to make the 5% projection that People's Congress looked at the beginning of the year. Now, at the moment, you were talking about deflationary trend. September, yes, 0.4%. In September, it was actually called CPI. We're called CPI now. Rose 0.1%. So year on year, the performance has not been much. That's why the authorities, the People's Bank of China, and the National People's Congress that took a decision last Friday, has been providing a lot of stimulus. Now, those stimulus, the analysts say that they will still need to pay attention to the alignment between fiscal and monetary policy. China's situation is further complicated by the great uncertainty that Trump's emergence, Trump 2.0, has imposed on the global economy. Trump is saying that all countries will pay tariff of a flat rate of 20%. That's why Macron and Keir Starmer are meeting today in France after the Armistice Day celebrations at the Arc de Triomphe. Triomphe, it is called in French. Now, the other issue is US is saying we will impose 60 to 100% tariff on Chinese products. So it's a great uncertain future for China. However, the other issue that I thought you would draw attention to, apart from the Singles Day, is that China is reconsidering its one-child policy. It has provided incentives, but people are not taking it up. Birth rate is still dropping. Death rate is not dropping, or more people are living. The population is young. There is no housing. There is no work. Young people are used to one-child policy. They are not encouraged. So this is the situation in China. I brought up the population issue because you always like to talk about population. And Singles Day, they don't want to marry in China.